I think that they're both pretty bad for different reasons. I think that when you look at President Obama's approach to taxes, if you take him at his word, which is totally fair enough, and he wants to insulate all households earning less than $250,000 a year, or say $200,000 for individuals, then the tax increases he's contemplating are actually much, much bigger than they would be if we just restored the Clinton-era tax code, because of course the Clinton-era tax code had somewhat higher taxes on middle-income households as well. So then you also have a lot of taxes in the Affordable Care Act. You also have a proposal from the Obama White House to curb the use of deductions for folks making over $250,000 a year. So all told, you're talking about generating way, way more from this slice of the population than you would under the Clinton tax code. And that means that you're having very, very high effective marginal tax rates. And while I don't think that marginal tax rates are as huge a deal as they were in the late 1970s, when they were much, much higher than they are right now. I don't think that cutting them would get you as much bang for the buck as they did then. I think that raising them too much could have really negative consequences. And I actually think there are some folks in the Obama administration who would agree with that. So for example, you've got a guy like Peter Orszag, who had been President Obama's first budget director, who has said that, well, what we really should do is actually, we should accept that we need to increase middle-class taxes to achieve our larger revenue goals. And I actually think that there's some reporting that suggests that President Obama basically buys into that as well. I couldn't really say. But I think that if you buy what he's saying about what he needs to do with taxes, and also the fact that he essentially endorsed the Gang of Six deficit reduction plan, which entailed really, really big tax increases, and again, consistent with his larger views, and that would be concentrated on this one group, I think that that would be pretty damaging. Now, if you look at Mitt Romney's tax proposals, I think in the very broadest sense, the idea of broadening the base and lowering rates is a good one. But I think that he has a lot of irreconcilable goals that he's articulated. And I think that my guess is that he would wind up abandoning some of those irreconcilable goals. If you look at his campaign, when he started out, he said, let's just keep the Bush rates in place, but let's cut capital income taxes for middle-income households, which is, of course, trivial because middle-income households generally don't earn a lot of capital income. Then he pivoted when he thought he might lose Michigan, and Rick Santorum was coming on strong, and he thought, I need some new, sexier tax plan. It's much like, George W. Bush thought that Steve Forbes was going to be his main opponent, and so then he adopted this more ambitious tax cut. So then it was this very reactive thing, and then he wound up with a tax plan that, appealed to the Wall Street Journal editorial page, but didn't necessarily even appeal to a lot of those swing voters that Republicans want to win over. That's why I'm a huge believer in Rob Stein's idea for a pro-family tax reform, something I've written about a lot and that Ramesh Ponnuru has also championed. And I think that had Mitt Romney done that, this tax conversation would have been radically, radically different and much, much smarter and much more favorable to right-of-center folks. And also would have probably won over a fair number of left-of-center folks as well. But instead, we wound up with this very arid tax policy debate between two ideas that, frankly, don't make a ton of sense. There are many, many, many tax deductions that I would get rid of, but one place to start is that, one man's tax deduction or tax expenditure is another man's, perfectly reasonable, sensible approach to tax policy. So for example, when you look at tax expenditures tallied up by the CBO, or they will describe the preference for capital income as a massive, massive tax expenditure, and that's fair enough. But others will say, well, wait a second, you're addressing double taxation or something like that. So there's a lot of parsing that goes on here. And I guess what I would say is that my number one tax deduction I would get rid of is the state and local tax deduction, because I think that it actually lends itself to a lot of bad things. It undermines competition among jurisdictions. It essentially subsidizes high-tax jurisdictions at the expense of low-tax jurisdictions. So I think that it would actually be a huge improvement to public policy if we got rid of that one. And broadly speaking, I think that what you'd want to do, and the thing that would be politically palatable, is to fix the mortgage deduction to basically make it less valuable to high earners and make it more broadly accessible, and fix the charitable deduction so that you make it above the line, and so you maybe raise a little bit more revenue, but you have a floor, so if you, kind of give less than X amount, then you can't really take it if you, something like that. That would, kind of gain you a little bit of revenue. You'd get rid of the other stuff, generally speaking. But the other thing that I like that a lot of other tax reformers hate is the child tax credit, because I personally see it as super important, and I think it should be actually dramatically bigger than it is. And I see that as a way to capture the fact that parents make really important investments in the next generation. When you look at Social Security and Medicare and blah, 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 they all depend on having educated, smart workers in the next generation. And I think that if in some small way the tax code can reflect that, that would be a good thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that state and local definitely get rid of that. Get rid of a lot of the others, but let's remember that people see these deductions very, very differently depending on where they sit, which is why Marty Feldstein's idea of capping tax expenditures is probably how we're going to politically make this happen, because it's something that doesn't require you to take on any particular constituency. So if you're looking to what's going to happen in 2013 and going forward, look for some kind of global cap on tax expenditures.